Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. First item on this evening's agenda is the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, November 21st. Recommendations to approve those minutes.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried. Actually, we should have done this before. I did want to acknowledge our two new council members to their very first council meeting, other than their inauguration. So Councillor Craig Hodge, Councillor Terry O'Neill, welcome. And that is the last time we'll say anything nice about you.
Last time you get a round of applause too.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Item 2 is the minutes of the public hearing held Monday, November 28th. Recommendations to approve those minutes.
So move.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
And item 3 is the minutes of the regular council meeting held Monday, November 28th. Recommendation to approve.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4 is the minutes of the Land Use and Economic Development Standing Committee meeting of Monday, November 28th. Recommendations to receive.
So move.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Councillor Hodge.
Item 4.2. The property is in close proximity to my residence, so I am going to excuse myself on the grounds that it could be a perceived conflict here. Yeah.
Exercising an abundance of caution. Thank you very much, Councillor Hodge. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you. Item 4.2 is an application to amend the zoning bylaw. This is Bylaw 4271 and the 5% parkland dedication requirements for a proposed subdivision at 3361 Millard Avenue. Recommendations that Council give first reading, see Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw 4271, refer Bylaw 4271 to public hearing, and require the owner of the proposed subdivision provide 5% cash in lieu.
So
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. Councillor Asmussen.
Thank you very much. I, too, have a perceived potential conflict of interest on this next item, and I will get Mr. Hodge to come back in.
Thank you very much.
we should hold a by-election.
Call this tag team council. Yeah, I heard it. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. Item 4.3 is a preliminary zoning amendment bylaw report to rezone a portion of 1239 Burke Mountain Street to accommodate a street-oriented village development. This is bylaw 4263. Recommendations that Council give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw 4263, and this bylaw will be referred to public hearing.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Sikora. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
I will
And I
just
actually ask that we move item 4.8 up, if that's possible.
agreement of Council. Absolutely.
Councillor Asmussen has identified two items. So
That's correct. Item 4.8 is development variance permit, and it pertains to 3476 Wilkie Avenue. Before putting forward the recommendation for Council's consideration, we do have two people who wish to speak to this item.
at least.
Sorry, that is correct.
So we'll hold a mini public hearing related to this development variance permit. We'll invite people to speak who may feel that they have something to say and wish council to be known. And I'll invite speakers at this point. We have two on the speakers list, Ian Cleary and Shane Peachman. Mr. Cleary. Your address for the record.
Yeah, my name is Ian Cleary. I live at 3470 Wilkie Avenue, Coquitlam. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my fiancée. Both of us live at that address. While I appreciate the challenges the owner faces in trying to develop this property, I am somewhat surprised by the city planner's support of this application when it requires the accommodation of not one or two variances, but four variances in order to fit the building footprint on the property. In fact, the proposed ban does not fit the property as proposed. What is proposed is potentially a two-family home factoring in the basement suite as well. With no yard to speak of front and back, which leaves the environmentally sensitive area around West Smiling Creek vulnerable because of the likelihood is that the creek area may very well become the backyard for people living on that property. The variance on the street setbacks are significant. 5.1 meter variance on a 7.6 meter setback on the front, which is actually a 6.1 meter variance for the basement floor. The variance for the setback off of Burke Mountain is 2.3 meters on a 3.8 meter setback. The footprint for this house is pushed to the extreme corner of Wilkie and Burke Mountain, a mere 2.5 meters off Wilkie and 1.5 meters off Burke Mountain. I'm concerned that this will become the acceptable standard for other development applications for similar properties along Burke Mountain Street. I have a real concern for the line of sight for traffic and pedestrians negotiating this corner. The risk will increase as the area population densifies. The majority of the families moving into the area are young families or young couples with growing families. Adding to my concern is the proposed plan shows a double garage and additional exterior parking stall, all of which will exit the property adjacent to this corner. Visitor parking may also be an issue. This home's driveway will be short due to the proximity to the street and may not be able to accommodate visitor parking without blocking the proposed sidewalk on Wilkie Avenue. Currently, there is no parking on Burke Mountain and essentially no parking on Wilkie until west of the bridge over the culvert protecting West Smiling Creek. This will push their visitor parking down Wilkie Street in front of our home and the homes of our neighbors. The variance in maximum height is of lesser concern because it is really insignificant by comparison to the other three, but it's something I expect could be easily re-engineered in order to be compliant with minimal impact to the building design. Respectfully, we must say that city planners appear to be overly accommodating in supporting this application because of the number of variances involved, which are significant for the most part. The correct thing to do is to reject this application as it currently exists and work with the owner to come up with an option for a plan that respects the existing setbacks or at least minimizes the need for variance to necessity. The 4 variances are really to accommodate the owner's desire to build a larger home. A design with a smaller footprint could fit within the setbacks or at least eliminate the need for variances of this magnitude and number. I'm confident there is a solution that will work for all, but there's more work that needs to be done in order to get there. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Cleary. Shane Peachman, 3469 Wilkie.
Which one? Okay. Yeah, Shane Peachman, 3469 Wilkie Avenue. I'd like to first thank Jonathan Jackson for providing me all the information that I required to actually assess the variances. I know when we first got the information from the city, it was pretty vague of what they planned to do, but by talking to Jonathan, him and I discussed, we know the same people. It was really good. I really appreciate that. Now, this is the first creek in the Burke Mountain Smiling Creek area development where spawning coho are being directly affected. No other creek in both Burke Mountain, whether it's Watkins or any other creek, has had spawning salmon being directly affected by how close this development is being built. West Smiling Creek is a coho salmon bearing creek. After Westbuild has spent thousands of dollars in 2007 to provide and install box culverts at West Smiling Creek, which you see right there, at Wilkie Avenue and Darwin Avenue, coho salmon have made it above Darwin in their epic spawning journey. Why would you allow this landowner to jeopardize this environmental miracle for a building envelope that could be greatly reduced to fit within the existing R7 setbacks? The slope of the land towards the fish-bearing creek is extreme, some 3 meters, 10 feet, whichever way you want to say it, from the northeast corner to the lot. The only foundation building that could sensibly be built would be built in the DFO opening in July and August, and even then, the danger of a summer storm could ruin fish habitat and kill coho fry in West Smiling Creek. The existing owner knew the restricted building envelope due to West Smiling Creek when he bought this property in 1972. So why is the city of Coquitlam even considering this proposal? I'm going to do this here. See, now you can see the salmon going into the culvert, and now they're actually making it above, like no other creek And anything that you guys have done uphill so far, or allowed uphill, has had this effect, because this will affect. These salmon are spawning themselves up. Any other place that you guys have entered or gone in as far as developing has never gone into an area like this so far. There's all kinds of this in Port Coquitlam, but you've never entered into this area. The existing, with no front, side, or backyard, does the city think that the main resident and the tenant will not enter into the SPIA area adjacent to the fish-bearing West Smiling Creek? My question is, does the SPIA fence have a chain guard? Do the environmental responsible thing and reject this proposal. Have the owner redesign the house with no suite and with no variances from RS7 zoning in order to protect wildlife and fish habitat. You see some more salmon spawning up there, and all these salmon are above Wilkie Avenue. They made themselves all the way up to Darwin, mainly to the thanks of what Westbuild have done in 2007. They've spent thousands of dollars to make that happen. And this owner, if he's allowed to do it, he's in an area where he can really directly affect those coho salmon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Peachman. Are there any other speakers to this item? Second time, are there any other speakers to this item? Third and final time, are there any other speakers to this item? I'll declare the development variance permit hearing closed. Mr. Clerk.
Thank you, Your Worship. The staff recommendation is that Council approve development variance permit for 3476 Wilkie Avenue, that the Mayor and City Clerk be authorized to execute it.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Reamer. Seeing no speakers, all in. Councillor Reid.
Well, I'll speak to this. When you look through the discussion and the analysis on the variances asked for, he is asking for a lot of variances on this particular one building. And if it's going to have a basement suite, and I remember reading it somewhere, but I see it has a basement. So through to staff, are you sure it's for a suite?
Mr. McIntyre.
To the Chair, the property is being developed under the RS7 zoning, which does not permit a suite. Now,
Does not permit a suite.
Now, I'd have to confirm that with the file manager, but I'm pretty sure there's not a suite planned as part of this building.
Okay. Well, when I'm looking at a setback from 15 meters to 11, that's quite a bit. That's quite a bit of a reduction. And from the natural water course. And I'm having trouble definitely with the front yard setbacks, and I understand why they are, but it seems to me we're trying to put an awful lot on a very little and very sensitive lot. So at this point in time, I will not be supporting this.
Thank you. Councillor Nicholson.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's reference in the report to the building footprint being entirely outside a 10-meter setback from the creek. But it's not clear to me where that 10-meter guideline comes from, because I also see a variance asked to go to 11 meters down from a 15 requirement. So what's our rule?
Stuff. Mr. McIntyre.
Thank you, Your Worship. It does get a little confusing, because along the water course, there's a number of requirements that come into play. And the first one is the 10-meter setback, and that's under the riparian areas regulation. So that's looking at the setback of construction from a water course that's fish-bearing. And under the city system, that the applicant's qualified environmental professional, or QEP, they go out and they assess the creek, look at its quality and its connectivity to down and upstream, and they do an assessment, and they then identify and recommend a setback distance, and that's the 10 meters. So 10 meters from high water mark, and that defines the SPIA. That's the protected area. Now, because it's a creek of a certain size, there's also potential threat of a flooding hazard. And so under the city zoning bylaw, we stipulate setbacks from various watercourses of various sizes. And several years back, variances were only considered by the Ministry of Environment. But that's one more thing the province has downloaded on us. So now the city of Coquitlam, as other local governments, has that ability. Council has that ability through our development variance permit, our DVP process, to consider requests for relaxations of flood setbacks. And so that's why there's a whole bunch of reports attached from the various professionals to the back of the staff report. So there was an engineering report that was done, I think, back in 2010, and then it was a follow-up done just late in the fall of this year, just verifying that that relaxation of a setback from the 15 meters, which would normally be the case on this water course, down to 11.5, I believe it is. And so they looked at it, and they've that engineering consultant's determination is they felt it was safe, given the location of the house, set back from the creek, and its elevation above the water course. And so that was the basis of that report. If the DVP is supported by council, that would then be captured in a restrictive covenant that go on the title of the property. So the current owner may not hang on to it if they sold it to someone else. That person going in would know there's these setback restrictions that face them, both in terms of the RAR for the SPIA and for flood protection reasons.
Okay, I like 15 meters a lot better than 11. And Councillor Reid asked about the possibility of a suite. There may not be one planned, but within the zoning, would one be permitted? I suspect you're not able to tell me that there won't ever be a suite.
Through the chair, that's unfortunately that's correct. Can't foresee the future, but again, my understanding is the property is being developed under the RS7 zoning, and so a suite would not be permitted on that property.
Thank you. I won't be supporting this.
It's a little suspicious. He has got a side door. Thank you, Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, thank you. It seems to me that there's three separate setback issues here, and the first two dealing with the environmental impact of the home on the stream and whether or not and the possible flood implications have all been looked at and deemed by proper authorities as being okay, safe for the environment and safe for flood. The third setback issue is setback from the street, and this is the dealing with the front yard setback. Is that right? It went from 7.6 meters, which one would expect, down to 2.5 meters. But the way I interpret all this is entirely due to the fact that they wanted to get the house as far away from the stream as they could, and therefore it had to get close to the street. But one of the speakers did raise the issue about, I believe it was Mr. Cleary, about the effect on traffic safety, the house being perhaps an impediment to sight lines around the corner and things like that. Was that addressed by staff at all?
Yeah, Your Worship. The same thought crossed my mind when the speaker made his comments. The DVP application would have been referred to engineering, which would include the transportation group, so I would trust that they looked at that. The setback relaxations are just as Councillor Neal, the front and side yard setback relaxations being sought are just for that reason. It's just basically to slide the house, the building envelope forward and away from the water course and the SPIA. The staff's sense of that was that even with those relaxations in the setbacks, it would still be sited on a lot as if it was an RS7 lot, given that the actual physical location of the road, because the road allowances through there are wider than you typically find in an RS7 subdivision. So the actual physical effect would be quite similar to what you see in RS7 subdivision. And perhaps if I apologize, I know there's a whole lot of material attached to the staff report, but if you go towards the back of the package, there's a couple of site plans there that show the the basement floor plan and the main floor plan, and I think that gives a pretty good impression of what where the proposed building location would be relative to the roads as to the curb lines and the sidewalks. And you can see, there's room for a driveway at the front, and there's a side yard on the Burke Mountain Street side.
Okay, thank you. Well, given all of that, then I will be supporting the application.
Thank you. And I was just looking at the drawings that you referred to, Mr. McIntyre. I can't remember the answer to the question. Is a suite permitted in this building?
It is not, Your Worship.
Okay. Because there's one designed into the building. I'm looking at the basement floor plan. Has a beautiful kitchen. It even has a foyer, an entrance foyer. Normally, you don't have an entrance foyer in a basement. And it's got a bedroom, a kitchen, living room. The main floor has a bedroom, kitchen, living room, and a dining room and a den. And I guess the upper floor has the bedrooms for the top 2 stories. But
You're right.
I mean, they've designed a suite into it. They've designed separate entrances for the basement. And I don't know where they'd park the car, so it's not going to be a legal suite. But I won't dare to suggest that they'd actually open it as a suite, because I am not certain, of course, but it sure looks like a suite.
Your Worship, I am sorry, I can't give you a definitive answer. The floor plans would suggest that, so my understanding was I was told there wasn't a suite, but perhaps if Council wishes, we can discuss that with the applicant and get an absolute confirmation back to Council.
Won't make a difference to me.
Okay, I also had some concerns about, I don't have any concerns. I think we treat this one as we treat others. When the QEP says 10 meters, we say 10 meters. If the QEP says 11 meters, we say 11 meters. We don't say 11 meters because it's too close to the road. We say 11 meters, and then we work with the development variance related to the distance from the road. And I'm a bit concerned with the distance of the road, although I understand the challenges related to this, and we want to protect the stream, and therefore we're willing to forego some of the front yard setback or side yard setback. I think we might be foregoing a bit too much. I think if they were willing to give up their suite in the basement, they could have 2 cars of parking and set the house back more. But I think they're trying to pack 2 units onto a half of a single-family home site, and so I have my concerns about that. So I will ask. I would like to hear the answer that staff come back with, but I think the answer will be, of course, we don't intend to have a suite. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much. Is there a separate entrance for this suite, that so-called suite, Mr. McIntyre?
Yeah, it actually says suite foyer, or sorry, it says foyer down there, with a separate entrance. Yes.
Separate entrance.
I believe
back door too.
On that, on both the floor plan for the basement, it does show an entrance at grade for that area.
But it also could be to the yard, right? It's not 2 separate entrances. In other words, they can have entrance, 1 door to the front and 1 door to the back.
No,
I mean, in an average home, that's what you'd find, wouldn't you?
It's just that. It's a separate entrance to the house.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I lived on Porter Street, I had certainly a suite in my basement, fully furnished, and with all the amenities in it, all the kitchen and everything else, but it was never, ever rented. The fact is, I had a big swimming pool in the backyard and a sauna and a few other things, and I didn't want people going from bathing suits to the upstairs to change. So certainly there was a bathroom and there's everything else, and if they wanted to have a hot dog or something, to go in the kitchen and have a hot dog. Don't go through where there's hardwood floor and carpet and that type of deal. So, it'd be very interesting to find out whether, in fact, they are, why the basement with a kitchen in it. It'd be very interesting to find out about that. But I know that these setbacks, and the speaker said that certainly something that's coming in the future. Well, I'm not going to prejudge what's coming to the future. I'm going to prejudge this development alone, and whatever comes in the future, I'll prejudge it then when it comes to me then, but not way ahead of time. And the fact is, as long as this, it meets the requirements of fisheries and everybody else, and certainly the engineers have done a tremendous amount of work on this property. You know, this report is huge. I see no reason why I can't support it. Thank you very much.
Just for clarification, Councillor Segura, there are two doors to the exterior from the basement. At least it appears so. One in the back and one in the front, underneath the front door.
Yeah, that's what I mean, yeah.
So it's the front door upstairs and the front door downstairs. Okay. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. Well, when I first read this, I actually put a big question mark by it because I wasn't too enamored with the amount of setbacks. And I appreciate the neighbors coming and speaking to it because it helped me make up my mind. And then I really appreciated drawing a closer attention to these drawings because to the right of the two-car garage, there's this little pad and it says suite parking, which suggests to me that they're planning a suite. This is a planned suite. So it just really confirmed and turned my question mark into a no, I will not be supporting this.
And I didn't see that one. There we go. Well, they've got parking for the suite. Good. Any other discussion? Seeing none. I don't hear a motion to refer anywhere, so I'm going to call the question.
I'll move a deferral motion.
Deferral won't do because we don't have anything to defer it to. Do you want to refer it to something in
The
particular?
planning department to see actually as far as that basement suite is concerned.
Okay, the question on the basement suite related to that. And, okay, the motion is referral to staff with a question on the basement suite. All in favor of referral? Opposed? Councillor Nicholson and Reid and Robinson are opposed. The motion carries.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'll just go collect Councillor Asmundson.
Thank you very much.
The next item on the agenda is item 4.4. This relates to proposed amendments to the zoning bylaw related to bicycle parking requirements. This is bylaw 4269. The recommendation from staff is to give first reading to zoning amendment bylaw 4269 and refer this bylaw to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Asmundson, second by Councillor Robinson. Councillor O'Neill.
Yes, I've got some concerns with this proposed bylaw. Sort of at the higher level, it seems to me that if we are asking developers of commercial buildings or residential structures to build bike storage spaces within their buildings in order to further our commitment to bike transportation in the city and to encourage that sort of thing and to encourage people to do that. And at the same time, we are still asking them to provide full parking spaces for cars, that it's kind of an incongruous thing. That one would think that in a sort of a balanced approach, you would say, well, if you're going to build all this bike storage facility, you don't need to build as many parking spaces within your development. So that's just kind of at the high level. A little closer to home is the affordability issue. I see that the only sort of question about affordability is the staff report, there are no financial implications. Of course, no financial implications on City Hall, but there certainly has to be if we are asking, especially I'm thinking from the point of view of residential structures, developers to build secure storage facilities within those residential structures. There has to be a financial component to this, and that will be an upward pressure on the cost of the homes that are built. As well, I look at a sort of a prescriptive approach that we're taking here. Yeah, council does have a lot of things that it wants to encourage. We want to encourage sustainability too, but we don't ask every developer of a new apartment building to provide a 50-square-foot greenhouse on the patio so people can grow their own carrots and turnips. Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to give anybody any ideas here, and maybe that's going to be the case here. So, you know, just because we believe in something, it doesn't mean we have to pass laws mandating that. We can encourage it. So I'd rather let the market forces shape this rather than us prescribing this. That if a builder wants to provide this sort of amenity within the new condominium unit or high-rise tower, let the builder do that, and let's see if the customers flock to it or not. And if enough customers want to buy that into that building because of that feature, then other developers will provide that feature as well. If nobody wants that, and indeed the experience in Vancouver quite recently was that the commercial structures were very successful and getting a lot of usage from bicycle users, but there was problems within the residential structures because the people who owned $1,000 and $2,000 bicycles did not trust the security in those systems, in those buildings, and were taking, even though there is facilities there, they were taking the bikes into their apartments. So let's see what happens given the market forces here, and let's not do something that will drive up prices that is incongruous in terms of our approach to transportation. If we really are serious about bikes, then we should be saying, well, provide fewer parking spaces for cars, and that's not happening here either. So, but I'd like to see this go ahead to the public hearing and see what the other people have to say about this, including the development community.
There you go. It will be something that will come up time and time again, whether the market does it. Councillor Sikora.
Thank you very much, Mayor. I'm of the same mind that Councillor O'Neill is as far as the bicycle things are concerned. Now, number one, each apartment that I've seen, even the one that I live in, certainly has a bicycle storage place. Matter of fact, quite a large bicycle storage space. But I think what we're doing is asking for more than just that, than just a storage for bicycle that people live in an apartment that have bicycles. Am I correct, Mr. McIntyre?
To the chair, it's very true. We do have a number of apartment buildings in Coquitlam that have provided bicycle storage, and I think in part that's to respond to the developer's sense of the market demand or interest in that. And as well, and Council may recall that as development variance permit applications for parking relaxation have come forward in recent years, one of the things that's gone sort of part and parcel with that is the provision of bicycle parking areas. So we have sought that in the past as well. So it's very true. You'll find apartment buildings in Coquitlam that have indoor bicycle storage.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, quite a few now. I don't think I've never seen one that's got underground parking that doesn't have a bicycle storage. So what I have, if I hear you correctly, what you're saying that you need some bicycle racks outside the building. Is that what we're asking for in here?
No. Mr. McIntyre.
It would be some flexibility in locating the bicycle parking areas. There'd be those for the residents, and then those separate and more accessible for visitors. It'd be a more open location.
And would that mean that some of the parking spaces would be gone, or some of the sidewalks would be used? What are we getting at in here?
Well, certainly we wouldn't want to be losing other parking spaces unless they were to make that part of their parking relaxation request. But no, these would be areas. It would take some detail in the site planning that you wouldn't impact on green space or other amenity areas. But you'd find area on the site, either on the site for the visitor or within the building for the residents to accommodate these parking areas for bikes.
So this could impact the size of the building that would be built, because if you're going to try and put it on a property, that means either you go underground where the visitors' parking spaces are for bicycle racks, or you eliminate a couple parking spaces, or you go and build a place where people can go in and put their bicycles, or eliminate some of the building envelope.
Through the chair, that would not be the intent. Again, I think it would be a matter of some thoughtful design to provide the spaces for bicycle parking. As we said before, we're seeing that happening now in Coquitlam. So it's to include that opportunity at the same time, preserve some of the other amenities.
Well, I see that this is going to public hearing. I'd be very interested to listen to the public hearing, because frankly, I'm not getting the answers that I think that, because it's got to affect some way, either the building envelope or parking or sidewalk or meters. It's got to affect something. You know, it just can't be, you know, to where it doesn't affect anything and the building envelope is the same and it doesn't cost the developer any more money. It's the status quo. So I'm interested in seeing this go to public hearing and see what they tell us at the public hearing. Maybe I can get more information then. Thank you.
Councillor Reid.
The reason I'm supporting this is because some developers are doing it now. Some developers aren't, because they figure they don't have to. Staff and I are on a constant collision course on parking. And we live in a very hilly neighborhood. And in our town center here, which is zone C4, which we're trying to get lots of little neighborhood walking shops and restaurants and things like that, well, the downtown core won't be alone be enough to sustain them all. We're still going to want our folks to come from Burke Mountain and Westwood Plateau and other places to come down. Some are going to ride bikes down. I certainly won't be one of them, but some folks are going to be doing that. Bicycle parking in downtown Vancouver has become quite an expensive proposition for folks too, because when they take these $1,000 bikes up in the elevator, they're damaging walls and doors and elevators. They're parking them out on balconies. It looks pretty trashy in some of the better neighborhoods. So that also takes into a whole bunch of money that the actual strata councils have to deal with, and a lot of problems. One of the most successful ones I've ever seen is an actual room where everybody has a special card that gets them into the room to get their bike and get out of it. And I don't know, I think it's worth going to public hearing, and I think it's worth listening to what the folks have to say. The developers will certainly come and put their case forward, as will some of the folks that ride bikes to and from work, and at least we'll get an idea. We have a parking problem right now in the town center. It's very evident from even the small amount of stores and that we have on High Street and Glen and all that right now. We have a huge parking problem there, and we're not even built yet. And, I mean, Coquitlam Center is running around putting tickets on cars, you know, warnings that they've been there 3 hours and that, and were you shopping or were you out visiting some of the folks in the neighborhood? So that's their private property. They pay taxes on it. I get lots of people phoning me to complain, but you know, it's right. If you're not shopping at Coquitlam Center, you shouldn't be parking there, but they are. So we have parking problems down there now. They're not going to get any better. I don't know how I can keep getting this through. I'll just keep chirping and harping on parking, I guess. But bicycle parking is maybe one way that we can alleviate some of the pressure. So I want to see this go forward to public hearing and see what the folks say. I'll be supporting it.
Thank you. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I suppose there is a way, you know, that you could, I guess, let the market sort of have its way and respond in the way that, you know, the market asks it to. But there is a wonderful movie, I forget the name of it, you probably do, Councillor O'Neill, Build It and They Will Come. That was the famous line in the movie, the baseball movie. Field of Dreams, thank you. It's one of those, you know, later tonight we're going to be looking at our Strategic Transportation Plan update. And we want to increase the mode of travel, recognizing that people are still likely to have cars, but we want them to use them less. So I do appreciate that there's pressure on developers. That what we're saying is you got to take care of both, the cars and the bikes. I think if we are going to be looking at moving in that direction, we want to encourage that, then you need to build the structures that support that. I cycle a lot, not as much as I'd like, and believe it or not, bike parking actually is an issue. And I have left it up against walls, secured my bike to trees. That's not good for the trees, it's not good for the city, so we need to ask businesses to facilitate that. And I do believe, build it and they will come, and I think that this is part of building it so that we can shift the mode share of travel. Same thing with sidewalks, anything else. People could walk along the side of the road, but if you give them sidewalks, they're likely to walk a bit more because it's safer. So build it and they will come.
Thank you. My turn. I think Councillor O'Neill might be perfectly in agreement with build it and they will come. He's just suggesting we don't need a baseball diamond in every cornfield. Perhaps the market should determine where they go. At the same time, we don't let the market determine where we park cars. We require every building to have sufficient parking for what we think it needs, not what the developers thinks it needs, but rather we as public policy, people who establish public policy think it needs, because we don't let the market decide. If we did let the market decide, we'd find a whole lot of buildings underbuilt on parking because they're expensive and because the owners aren't willing to pay the $40,000 cost of a parking space in many cases, and they might choose to figure out how to kind of park out in the street, as it happens in many cities that are less careful with their parking. We require car parking even though we want to encourage them to find other alternatives. Here, one of the alternatives is bicycles. It might be appropriate that we require bike parking since it's one of the alternatives we're encouraging, and require less automobile parking, and that's where I would like to see us go ultimately, is require less automobile parking, require more bike parking. In the end, if you've ever seen the design of an underground parking lot, in most cases it doesn't require anything, because there's that little corner you can't put a car in, and that's where they put the bike parking, or they put it in two different places because there's two corners. This can typically be achieved with little or no pain. I think by most architects can work this out. We could even encourage buildings to put some short parking spaces in, because one or two spaces for shorter cars, like one of our councillors uses, might be entirely appropriate and would allow room for bike parking. So I'm supportive of this going to public hearing. I'd be interested in hearing the public's perspective, but I suspect the public will be supportive of this by and large. I think the development industry will realize it's coming because it has come to so many other cities as well. Councillor Reamer.
Thank you. I too am going to support this, and will be interested to hear back from the public. But I just only wanted to add one more thing, and that is for builders and developers, it's sometimes easier to have the rules in place ahead of time so that we're not getting these applications in and then springing the issue of bicycle parking on developers. When you have something built into a bylaw like this, the rules are set out clearly, and I do think that builders and developers do appreciate that fact. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Hodge.
Yes, I too am going to support this going to public hearing. I'm interested in hearing from the developers on this, but I believe that as it's already been stated, I believe that the demand is already there, and if it's not there today, it will be there tomorrow. And like a lot of these things, it's easier to put the amenities in now than to go back in later and try to add amenities at a later date. We're seeing provisions on our transportation. We're seeing provisions on our buses, West Coast Express, places at West Coast Express to store bikes, and I think that it starts at home, and we have to have provisions at both ends, and we're working on the bike lanes, we're working on provisions on transportation, so we've got the middle part of it handled, and I think we have to look at how they're going to store it before they leave and when they get there to their destination. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about this.
Thank you very much, and that's the end of the speakers. All in favor? Opposed? After all that debate, the motion carries unanimously.
Next item, item 4.5, is a report on application pertaining to Bylaw 4270. These are housekeeping amendments to the zoning bylaw. Recommendations that Council give first reading, see Coquitlam Zoning Amendment Bylaw 4270, and then refer Bylaw 4270 to public hearing.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4.6 is a development permit authorization for a 44-unit conventional townhome project at 3458 Burke Village Promenade. Recommendations to council approve the signing and sealing of the DP and that the mayor and city clerk be authorized to execute it.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 4.7 is the authorization for issuance of a development variance permit for 3445 Galloway Avenue. Before putting forward the recommendation, I would ask the chair to call for speakers.
Thank you. It's another development variance permit. Are there any speakers to this item? Are there any speakers to this item? Third and final time. Are there any speakers to this item? Seeing none.
Thank you.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you. Item 4.8 has already been disposed with, and we are now on to item 4.9. 4.9 pertains to School District 43 and its 2011 eligible school site proposal. Recommendation from the Standing Committee is that Council accept the eligible school site proposal submitted by the school district and that staff be directed to relay the city's concerns to the school district regarding the alignment of their capital plan with city plans as set out in the report.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
And item 4.10 pertains to Housing Choices Implementation Servicing Strategy. Three-part recommendations that Council endorse the servicing strategy, including the requirements as set out before you here. The Council give first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Building Amendment Bylaw 4238 and to require perimeter works and services for new two-family dwellings, i.e. duplex developments, and that should Council adopt this bylaw, staff be directed to provide notification of this strategy through a direct mailing to builders who have been issued building permits in the past 2 years for these type of buildings.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 5 is the minutes of the Recreation, Sports and Culture Standing Committee meeting held Monday, November 28th. Recommendation to receive.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item of business arising out of that committee's meeting pertains to UBCM age-friendly community project grants, and the recommendations that Council direct staff to submit a funding application to the UBCM for such a grant.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Robinson.
Thank you. I do think it's important to acknowledge that one of the reasons that this project grant is targeting, how do we call this group, the young senior, the young older person, I don't know what to call them. I know there's a word for the younger 50 plus, 50 to 60, whatever they are.
The prime of life, the really important
I'm not
people.
there yet, so what do you guys call yourselves? It's middle age. Middle age. I think it's important to just recognize that it was helpful to actually have a conversation with staff about this one, is the reason that they're looking to attract this age group has to do with when the building, at Dogwood in particular, has the least amount of usage. So that's part of what's driving this focus. And having learned that, I think it's after 8 in the evening and weekends. And given that that's when we're looking to increase utilization of our buildings, I think it's important that our buildings get fully utilized. I'll be supporting this application.
Thank you very much. It's also important to note that while this deals only with Dogwood Pavilion, the results of it will undoubtedly be applied across the city to all of our seniors facilities, all three of them. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6 is the minutes of the Engineering, Utilities, and Environment Standing Committee meeting of Monday, November 28th. Recommendations to receive those minutes.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6.2 pertains to the Strategic Transportation Plan update. This is the Phase 3 evaluation and preferred scenario. The recommendation from the Standing Committee is that Council direct staff to finalize the long-term Strategic Transportation Plan, incorporating public and stakeholder feedback in accordance with the preferred scenario and level of investment as outlined in the report.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Reamer. Councillor Asmussen.
Just making through to staff that there was a series of questions in regards to the transportation plan moving forward to its final phase, and all those comments from the committee will be included within the update version.
Through your worship, yes, indeed. We have good notes on all of the individual councillors' issues with the plan, and we intend to address those one by one with the report that comes back.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing none others. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 6.6 pertains to the 2011 Metro Vancouver Drinking Water Management Plan. The recommendation from the Standing Committee is that Council endorse the municipal actions contained in this water management plan dated June 2011.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
And item 6.7 is proposed amendments to the Subdivision and Development Servicing Bylaw. The recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Subdivision and Development Servicing Amendment Bylaw 4264.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 7 is fourth and final reading of Highway Dedication Cancellation Bylaw 4099. This is adjacent to 2976 Pheasant Street, and the recommendation is that Council give fourth and final reading to Highway Dedication Cancellation Bylaw number 4099.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 8 is fourth and final reading of City of Coquitlam Consolidation Bylaw 4241 and City of Coquitlam Bylaw Repeal Bylaw 4242. The recommendation is that Council give fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam Consolidation Bylaw 4241 and fourth and final reading to City of Coquitlam Bylaw Repeal Bylaw 4242.
So moved.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Robinson, to repeal some out-of-date bylaws and consolidate. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 9 pertains to 2012 Fees and Charges Bylaw 4243, and the recommendation is that Council give first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam 2012 Fees and Charges Bylaw 4243.
Move recommendation.
Second.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, second by Councillor Nicholson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 10 is the 2012 Water, Sewerage, Drainage, and Solid Waste Rate Amendments. The recommendations that Council give first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Water Distribution Amendment Bylaw 4281, first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Sewerage and Drainage System Amendment Bylaw number 4282, and first, second, and third readings to City of Coquitlam Solid Waste Amendment Bylaw 4283.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, second by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Sikora.
Yeah, thank you very much. You know, some of these increases that, I guess it's Metro Vancouver, you know, solid waste that's going to be going way up, some like maybe double or triple in the next few years. I've got a little difficulty with that. And the fact is that, you know, also the water rates are going up, and everything seems to be increasing, you know, at 4, 5, 6%, and looks like the solid waste will be going up by about 25%, you know, with what they're projecting, and even higher than that. I got some difficulties with that. I know that, you know, the board hasn't got much room to move because that's the way it's voted out at or Coquitlam hasn't got much choice because that's the way it's voted at the board. But I have real difficulties with this, Mayor.
Well, I'm sure we all do. I mean, there's not, as has been pointed out, this is a bunch of increases largely passed on to us by Metro. If any of us, if we vote down these increases, we're left with having to come up with the money somehow because we still have to buy water and those services from Metro. We've had those discussions about Metro Vancouver and its challenges, the challenges it creates for local government, and I think that this next 3 years will be primarily about trying to figure out how Metro Vancouver can get its costs in line the way other communities have had to. Councillor Asmussen.
Well, thank you very much. And, you know, the comments have made that, you know, Metro Vancouver has been a large part of this problem. I think the solid waste amendments you're looking at going from, I think, about 3 years ago at $70 a tipping ton They're projecting by 2016 to be at $210 per tipping ton for solid waste disposal. That's quite an increase, which we at Council have to pass on or change the people's habits to divert more away from garbage into organics, recycling to control our costs. But I think when you look at this, our cost increase to this is 1%. I think that's showing how good the city has been at managing our end of our cost structure on this. So once again, we're stuck with those costs made by the Metro Board passing down to us, and we're simply having to pass that on to the taxpayers as a cost of doing business. It's difficult, and I'll agree with Councillor Sikora that it should be a better job at Metro managing costs and controlling the costs. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Seeing no other speakers. Water, sewage, drainage, and solid waste rates. All in favor? Opposed? Okay. Councillor Sikora is opposed. Yes. Okay.
Metro Vancouver increases.
This wasn't Metro's increases. This, okay. Anyway. Okay. Mr. Clerk. Mr. Clerk.
Item 11 is the 2012 acting mayor schedule, and the recommendation is that Council approve the 2012 acting mayor schedule.
Moved by Councillor Reamer, seconded by Councillor Nicholson, I think it was. Yes, you're
back again.
You're acting mayor for all of the Christmas functions.
I know, it's just going to be a little difficult to get down the chimneys these days.
All in favor? Opposed? I'm the only one opposed. No, I'm not. Motion carries.
Item 12 pertains to 2011 general local election. The recommendation is that the 2011 general local election results be received for information.
Moved by Councillor Asmussen, seconded by Councillor Nicholson. Councillor O'Neill wants to take issue with the results of the local elections.
I think Councillor Hodge and I should have been the one to move and second that.
I consider the motions withdrawn. The motions on, is there a mover?
So moved.
Councillor O'Neill, is there a seconder? Councillor Hodge. Okay. Any debate whatsoever? Come on, surely someone's got a problem with this. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Item 13 is the Metro Vancouver Board in brief. We have our Metro Vancouver Board representatives available to respond to questions, and the recommendation is that Council receive this brief for information.
Moved by everybody, I think. Councillor Nicholson will go with, and Councillor Robinson seconded it. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you, Your Worship. We do have 3 onward transmittal items. There are blue copies available at the back of the room for anyone who may not have received them. And I will begin with item 14, which is the 2012 Metro Vancouver Board and Committee appointments. Recommendations that Council approve the following appointments: that Mayor Richard Stewart in 3 votes and Councillor May Reid in 3 votes be appointed as Metro Vancouver Board of Directors, that Councillor Nicholson be the alternate to Mayor Stewart, and that Councillor Robinson be the alternate to Councillor Reid. For the Labour Relations Bureau, that Councillor Linda Reamer be our appointee, and that Councillor Asmussen be the alternate, and that we convey to Metro Vancouver Coquitlam's interest in having representatives sit on the following boards: Environment and Energy, Councillor Nicholson; the Finance Committee, Councillor Nicholson, with Councillor Reid as an alternate; Housing Committee, Councillor Reid; Intergovernmental Committee, Mayor Stewart; Parks Committee, Councillor Robinson; Regional Cultural Committee, Councillor O'Neill; Regional Planning Committee, Mayor Stewart; the Waste Management Committee, Councillor Robinson; and the Water Committee, Councillor Reid.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Robinson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously. I thank all members for their willingness to work at the regional level.
Thank you. Item 15 is appointments to 2012 statutory committees and other bodies. The recommendation is that Council approve the appended list of Council member appointments to statutory committees and other bodies as listed in Attachment 1. That the following system appointments to the Library Board and Board of Variance be approved. To the Library Board, we have 3 reappointments: Lance Guick, Bertha Rojas, Jack Trumley, Ron Lee, and John J.J. McCullough. And for the Board of Variance, Mr. Nick Dominelli.
Moved by Councillor Sikora, second by Councillor Reamer. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Finally, item 16 pertains to the 2012 council meeting schedule, and the recommendations that council approve the 2012 council meeting schedule.
Moved by Councillor Robinson, second by Councillor Asmundson. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.
Thank you. That is the last formal item on this agenda.
Councillor Reid moves adjournment, seconded by Councillor Robinson. Councillor Asmundson.
Just an item for a notice of motion. Basically, rather than going through all the whereases of it, the basic gist is that the last two terms I've been on, we've had by-elections. And we've had some interesting discussions on the last election about the cost of by-election. And this notice of motion is basically, I'll read that therefore it be resolved, the provincial government consider the introduction of legislative amendments to the existing Local Government Act to permit local governments greater flexibility to deal with council vacancies that arise during a term of office in order that local taxpayers are not forced to incur the high costs associated and with this is to go to the LNLGA and the Union of British Columbia Municipalities. And it's been seconded by Councillor Reamer. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Reid.
On that note, Councillor O'Neill and myself had this conversation with the Premier herself on Thursday, mentioning that you had pursued it last year, because we were hit by elections. So just for your information, she was quite receptive to looking at it and getting her staff to report to her.
Yep. No, pretty well everyone we've talked to at the provincial level believes it's a good point,
yep.
Believes it's a good issue. It simply requires, I think, some political will and a resolution to come out of discussions with other municipalities, probably through the UBCM.
Yeah, the Premier was going to follow up with you, I believe, Your Worship, about which staff you had spoken to, etc. But she was very receptive to the idea. It's good for us, but it's really good for some of the smaller towns in BC that if it costs them $30,000 or $40,000, that's a huge part of their budget.
Absolutely. No. Perfect. Thank you very much. Any other items? The motion is adjournment. All in favor? Opposed? Carried unanimously.